President Muhammadu Buhari, in his New Year address, reassured Nigerians of his government's commitment to the security of lives and property within the territory of Nigeria. He also added that despite the challenges Nigeria faced in 2021, it was a year his government successfully executed key projects, programs, and initiatives to fulfill the promises made under the security, economy, and anti-corruption agenda. The Nigerian president also pointed out that the 4.03 growth recorded in the third quarter of 2021 is indicative of the recovery being recorded in the economy. On Friday, President Buhari signed into law also the 2022 Appropriation Bill and the 2021 Finance Bill. He expressed dissatisfaction with certain changes made by the National Assembly to the budget. Senator Ajibola Bashiru, spokesperson of the Senate Ninth Assembly of Nigeria, now joins us to take a look at this issue of the 2022 budget and other issues of national interest. Senator Bashiru, thank you very much for joining us here at This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.
Yeah, good afternoon, and Happy New Year, Doctor, and the team of erudite scholars in the studio.
Well, Happy New Year to you too, Senator Bashiru. Well, first, before we begin to go into the details of the relationship between the executive arm of government and the legislature that you speak for, first, what do you make of President Muhammadu Buhari's New Year message to Nigerians and the points he made about the various challenges that his government has had to face and the determination of that government, the resilience of that government to address those issues, particularly with regard to security, the economy, and the war against corruption, the anti-corruption campaign, what the administration calls C, and he referred to all of that. The other element out of that he talked about is the determination of government to leverage technology to deliver results.
Yes, I think one, traditionally, the position would be that when you engage on self-assessment, that is the tendency for you to be seen as being biased. And that is why in the law, part of the rule of natural justice is the rule that Nemo Court, the rule of you cannot be a judge in your own case. But in this instance, as a government, you still nonetheless the possibility of you being levied with allegation of not being a judge in your own case, make your own assessment of what you have done so far. And I think that is what Mr. President had done in his New Year speech. And of course, the issues highlighted are relevant issues upon which an assessment can be made as to how the government is working. The issue of security is a topical issue. It's also a constitutional issue because the paramount purpose of governance, as stated in Section 14 of the Constitution, is security and welfare of the people. Security even being mentioned before welfare. Of course, in the past year, you have seen also intervention in the area of ensuring adequate equipment for the Nigerian security forces. But of course, in making the assessment, I will also say that as a government, and I speak this not just as a person in the legislative arm, but as a government as a whole, we need to look at security architecture of the country, particularly the area of decentralizing the Nigerian police force, ensuring that they have better manpower, and of course, they have better organization in terms of decentralization of their budgetary and operational command, such that we will be able to attend to the problem of insecurity in Nigeria in a way that now leave the Nigerian armed forces to tackle more issue of external aggression and the more serious insecurity issue as the banditry or terrorism in the northwest and the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast. In the area of economy, at the risk of being biased, I would say that notwithstanding the challenges that we are facing, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic globally ravaging and still ravaging, and the attendant challenges it has brought into local economy in the context of Nigeria, I will say that by ensuring that we have full implementation of the capital aspect of the 2021 appropriation to 100% full implementation, that is a good indication of the readiness to tackle the problem in the area of the economy. But then, nonetheless, and I think that is why the president is adverting to the need to look at digital economy. But beyond that, we need to address the problem of food security as a way forward to addressing the challenge of our national economy. When we look at the amount of resources, amount of our foreign exchange that goes to importation of food, then we need to look inward and ensure that we have meaningful intervention in the area of agriculture. If you take agriculture sector and you take it very seriously and you address the problem of food security, and I think largely we'll be able to free resources to address more technological advancement in the area of advancing our economy. Then, of course, the issue of the welfare of the average Nigerian also needs to be looked into. We have a situation whereby the challenge of the foreign exchange, inflation has affected the purchasing power of an average Nigeria. These are areas that I think we should be looking at as a government in the year 2022. How do we ensure that we get our people to the path of sustainability in the area of food security, in the area of the welfare, and of course in addressing the serious lacuna in the area of infrastructure development. I think those are part of it. And of course, our government is a continuum, and government will always be challenged. But the seriousness that we attach to addressing these burning challenges will be the measure by which the government will be assessed by Nigerians.
Well, Senator Bashiru, I will get to some specific details in a moment. But in that speech by President Muhammadu Buhari, he made the point about the Petroleum Industry Act, the bill which is signed into law on August 16, 2021. And, in terms of the speech that has been given, the New Year message by the president, you recall that Alhaji Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information, had previously given a long breakdown, and he described the passing of the Petroleum Industry Bill as the most profound achievement of the Buhari administration. To what extent can we, agree with that proposition, considering the fact that the true test of any piece of legislation is in its implementation? And this is not a piece of law that has been, tested, and there is a lot of controversies existing about the Petroleum Industry Act.
Yes, I would say that to a large extent, talking about implementation, for you to implement a law, you look at whether there is even, there are provisions that are capable of implementing and the result of that implementation. Considering the fact that the Nigerian oil and gas sector had been in the state of limbo because of absence of a definitive legislation that would shape that sector for close to 2 or 3 decades, show that the making of the law itself, one, address a fundamental lacuna, and that is the problem of uncertainty in the oil and gas sector. To that extent, the statement of the Honorable Minister for Information will be said to be apposite in this regard. Secondly, too, looking at the architecture of the legislation and the way it has been done in having a holistic legislation that address the regulatory aspect of the industry, address the fiscal aspect in terms of taxation and fiscal regime, address peculiarly the issue of the host community, and introducing trust instruments as the basis of addressing the challenges of investment in the area of the host community. I think this, having a holistic legislation addressing the problem in the oil and gas sector, also make the legislation to be profound. And of course, investment decision, final investment decision in the oil and gas sector possibly take a period of 5 years. So the gains of that sector will be seen in a couple of years. It cannot be immediate. So, but it suffices to say that some of the challenges and peculiarities of the oil and gas sector in Nigeria have been addressed by having a definitive and certain legal regime that investors locally and nationally can begin to make final investment decisions in terms of investing in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. Of particular interest to me are the various licensing regime that has now been put in place in the midstream sector of the oil and gas sector, which will allow that everybody who intends to partake will be able to partake in the sector that is amenable to their participation in terms of the level of investment that they can put in that sector. So I would say that first and foremost, today we can say and beat our chest that we have a definitive legislation that determines the legal framework of involvement in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. The previous legislation had been a product of military intervention. It was done in a period when the oil and gas sector globally was at incipient in terms of the development. So we have a legislation taking benefit of the advancement in the area of that sector globally and global best practices.
Well, Dr. Bashiru, apart from being the spokesperson of the Senate, you are also a lawyer. You've been Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Osun State before you came to the National Assembly. There's this raging controversy about the ownership of oil resources in Nigeria. And this came about as a result of former President Olusegun Obasanjo reacting to certain submissions at a conference in Abuja. And he's saying that, well, it would be illegal and unconstitutional for anybody to say that Nigerian oil belongs to the people of the Niger-Delta. Okay, maybe he's right within the purview of Section 44 of the Constitutions, the Land Use Act, and also Petroleum Act and all of that. But on the basis of that, he's been attacked heavily by persons from the Niger-Delta region saying that no, oil does not belong to Nigeria. It belongs to the people who are the original owners, maybe, if you like, the de facto owners, recognized under the principle of derivation. What do you think? Now, as a lawyer, I'll come back to you as a spokesperson of the Senate.
Yes, I think we must make a distinction between the law as it is, which the jurists call, the positivist school call the law as it is. As it is today, the former president is right based on the provision of Section 44 of the Constitution and the Land Use Act that the question of ownership of mineral resources is vested, in the government. And of course, the government, as we know it, is the federal government of Nigeria. And the Kantian, School of Jurisprudence, talking about the ground norm today is the Constitution of Nigeria. So irrespective of feelings, irrespective of sentiment, irrespective of having deep rationale that may be profile, you cannot begin to talk of ownership of mineral resources, ownership of land outside the extant law, which is the Constitution and the provision of the Land Use Act. Then whatever new arrangement people are proposing, which will be in the realm of what in law called lex ferenda, because there's a distinction between lex lata and lex ferenda in law. Lex lata has to do with the law as it is, lex ferenda with law as it ought to be, and proposition as to that. As to what the black letter of the law of Nigeria today, the former President Olusegun Obasanjo is right as to what is the position of the law today as to ownership. But maybe tomorrow, maybe because of agitation, maybe because of political arrangement, there may be a change in the law as to what is desired by people in the Niger-Delta. But as it is today, the interpretation of the law is that mineral resources is vested in the federal government of Nigeria.
Well, Senator Bashiru, on that note, we'll take a short break, and when we return, the conversation will continue. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. It's still This Is Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. Welcome back to This Is Live, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is still Senator Ajibola Bashiru, spokesperson of the Nigerian Senate Night Assembly, who has been helping us to take a look at some very topical issues in Nigeria at the moment. Senator Bashiru, thank you very much for staying with us. Well, I'm tempted to take us back quickly to this point about who owns Nigeria oil. And I'll just take you back to some of the submissions you made. You quoted Immanuel Kant, right? And you made a distinction between Lex Lata and Lex Ferranda. At the end of the day, you ended with John Austin, Austinian positivism. And that, I think, is the big argument. The people of the Niger-Delta are saying whatever is said in the Nigerian constitution, which is positivism, what the law is what the lawgiver says it is. They are saying that no, it's not like that. There's something called equity. Quid plantatus solo solo said it. He who owns the land owns whatever is attached to it. And that the people of the Niger-Delta, are the owners of the land. And that is something that should be looked into. So what do you say with regard to that? Because given our diversity, our cultural nature, is it right for people of the Niger-Delta to have the oil in their backyard and it's people in Atakumosa who are benefiting from it?
First and foremost, there's a difference between argument that is based for purpose of political agitation and argument that is based on the law being interpreted in the context of the existing legal order. And that is why I made allusion to the Immanuel Kant jurisprudence of the ground norm. Of course, in the context of making political agitations, you may even make arguments, you may make propositions as submission that is antithetical to an existing legal order. So the language of political agitation is different from language of the law. And what I've said here is does not mean that the legal regime may not change tomorrow, which may change because of different factors. For instance, if there is a revolution which is supplanting the existing legal order, a new legal order may rise in that context. Then in terms of utilization of resources, the essence of federalism and the essence of submitting to a united country is to ensure that resources, irrespective of where they are gotten, will be aggregated and they will be distributed and they will be utilized in the overall context of what I would call a Nigerianization policy. What we have had, and the sad commentary of governance in this country, is because we have not collectively utilized our resources in a way that promotes cohesiveness, that promotes a utilization of those resources for the collective development of our people. This leads to agitation at different levels for what I call resource control. If we have been able to utilize these collective resources, irrespective of what they are sourced from, in a way that advance a Nigerian identity, in a way that advance education, health, and development of our people, this agitation themselves, at the level of agitation, will be unpopular because people will not now go to issue of ethnization, of issue of resources, and deployment of those resources. So as admirable as contention on the part of those who claim to own those resources in terms of theoretical advancement may be, in terms of legal reality, they don't really own those resources, because even the idea of equity is in the context of a law. Even Quid Plantator Solo said it is a maxim that flow from a concept of law. And the concept of law has to do with ownership. And the concept of ownership is part of the artificial construct of the law itself. The attribute incident of ownership will have to be determined within the context of the existing legal order. I'm in support of the fact that people must get benefit from resources, particularly those are from their backyard, but that has to be looked within the context of good government and the context of proper utilization of resources. And if argument is taken, to that extent, for instance, even in the context of assuaging aspirations and the desire of people in Niger-Delta, we have had 13% derivation. We have the NDDC, the commission. We have the Niger-Delta ministry. The question we ask ourselves is that to what extent have this really been used to impact on the life in the Niger-Delta? I speak this with all sense of responsibility of somebody who has children who may also lay on their mother's side to be indigenes of the Niger-Delta. My children, they bear also Niger-Delta names. So it's not the question of somebody looking from the prison, but the question we ask ourselves, and we must ask ourselves as leaders, is that to what extent have we utilized those resources, even though they are taken to either national level or state level or local government level, to that of benefiting the average member of our society. Okay,
well, I get your point. There are other levels that, in which we can take it, but don't let us detain ourselves with ownership and trusteeship of Nigerian oil. But I'd like to ask you, President Muhammadu Buhari, I think it was on Friday, assented to the appropriation bill for 2022. But he said that, members of the National Assembly had tried to play a Ludo game with it. Critical projects have been reduced. Projects for MDA, some have been given more money. Some other unimportant ones, have been given more money. Critical ones have had the money reduced. And the whole proposal brought by the National Assembly is full of empowerment projects that will benefit the National Assembly and its members, and are even more worrisome in terms of reduction. Police allowances, statutory allocations in terms of service-wide votes have been tampered with. And that is going to send, an amendment bill to the National Assembly. So the National Assembly comes across as a community of self-seeking lawmakers who are trying to play Ludo with the appropriation bill. What's your reaction to this declaration?
I think first and foremost, appropriation is actually a legal process by Section 59 of the Constitution. The proposal by the executive is at the level of proposal. It is when it is put in the legislative furnace that it comes out as an act and then to be implemented in that regard. So I will first say, speaking theoretically and speaking in terms of allocation of power under the Constitution, the National Assembly is not bound to take hook, line, and sinker any proposition that have been sent to it by the president. So we are not just to go look at it and just, rubber stamp and approve it. Be that as it may, I've also had cause to look at some of the observations.
Hello? Hello, Senator Bashiru? Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Senator Bashiru?
I can hear you.
Okay, please go ahead. I lost connection with you for a moment.
Okay, I'm saying that I want to put a caveat to the observation I'll be making as to the observation made by Mr. President on the Appropriation Act, so that I will not be quoted as speaking as Senate spokesperson, but as a senator representing also Central Senatorial District. And the caveat is necessary because the Senate leadership and the Senate internally have not asked us to look into the observation made by the President to come up with what we coalesce and has been stated as the position of the Nigerian Senate. That caveat having been made, and I think some of the observations made by the President, I'm worried if actually those things actually occur. I'm particularly worried about the reduction of spending for certain critical projects that have been made by the executive. For instance, the reduction of 12.6 billion in the Ministry of Transport for the ongoing rail modernization project. I wouldn't know what to be the rationale for that reduction. So, because I believe that the modernization of railway is one of the thumbs up for the present administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. So if we're able to see this through, it will actually assist us in addressing the problem of infrastructure deficiency in the area of roads in Nigeria. I'm also worried about the reduction in 25.8 billion in the power sector, as well as reduction of 14.5 billion in relation to projects in the Ministry of Agriculture. But I must say that I give kudos to the President for going ahead to assent to the bill, because it would have created a problem if Mr. President, because of this fundamental conservation with earth assets, then that would have set us back in the quest to have a predictable budget cycle of January to December. And of course, Mr. President has said he will be coming back to the National Assembly with environment and of course with an attempt to address some of these observations. And I believe that in good faith, the leadership of the National Assembly and members of the National Assembly will take a critical look and ensuring that we make a budget that address the need to attend to those critical infrastructure, particularly in view of the fact that this will be the last budget that the President will be capable of being fully implemented. The next budget will be, at the best, the budget that the President will be in a position to do so for a period of 6 months, even though we are optimistic that my party, the APC, will still be in the presidency beyond May 29, 2023.
Finally, and as briefly as we can make it, just one more question for you. This contentious Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Now, the contentious issue is the direct primaries, the provision on direct primaries. But I'll come to you on that after this break, but we have just a few minutes left, in this segment of the program. We'll be right back. Stay with us. It's still This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Still with us is Senator Ajibola Bashiru, spokesperson of the Senate in the National Assembly of Nigeria. Senator Bashiru, thank you for staying with us. Before we went on that short break, I was asking you to comment on your expectations, what the National Assembly is likely to do with regard to the contentious matter of direct primaries, the contentious, controversial clause in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which the President refused to give his assent to. I asked you that question because in the last few days, we have had governors saying, look, President Buhari is in fact himself the #1 apostle of direct primaries, but that the conditions in the country do not support what the lawmakers want, and that you lawmakers are only interested in your own selfish interests, and that it's better for that clause to be expunged and the bill sent back to the President for his assent. Two governors, at least, Fayemi of Ekiti and El Rufai of Kaduna, have been quoted in the papers most recently saying so. Hello, Senator Bashiru.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
We will not join issue with anybody on the issue of ego or on issue of their personal sentiments, no matter how I replay. On the issue of the veto by Mr. President, we want to first say that there are about 185 clauses and the schedules in the electoral bill. So if the only issue that Mr. President has to do with one section, I think that means that the National Assembly has acquitted itself well. 0.5% has been objected to. So For those arguments on issue of direct primary, the first is that the president having withheld his assent, the option before the National Assembly are follows. One, to go by way of the previous two sessions of the National Assembly to abandon totally the reform exercise in the electoral law. This option is not plausible, and I don't think that will be the option that the next assembly will take. Just as I've said, of the 185 section law, only one section appears to be contentious. So this takes us to the second option. The second option would be to consider some of the arguments that have been proffered by Mr. President in rejecting the provision on direct primary. And a 19-paragraph letter has been sent by the President to the National Assembly. And I think that would have been the longest, that would arguably be the longest correspondence between the President and the National Assembly. All of us know that in terms of presentation, the President is rather very brief and possibly laconic in expression. So for him to put pen to paper to write 19 paragraph, I think it's appealing to the National Assembly to reconsider our position on issue of direct primary. Even though some of the arguments so far in the 19 paragraph letter of Mr. President are actually debatable. For instance, the arguments on issue of insecurity, if you go by way of what logicians call the doctrine ad absurdum, it will mean that because of a problem of insecurity, we should not even go ahead to do 2023 election. And the issue about arguments of a smaller political parties, all of us know, whether we like it or not, there are only two viable political parties in Nigeria in terms of electoral showing, and then all other parties may decide to organize their direct primary at the level of the state or local government, as the case may be. It's not given that it must be at the world level as the presumed in the contention by Mr. President. Then on the issue of being self-serving allegations that have been made by the two governors that you mentioned, I think it is uncharitable for them being highly placed in our political party and the political hierarchy to make such allegations. They are best what I call yellow allegations that have no basis. For instance, talking from my own perspective as Senator Ajibola Bashiru, whether direct primary or indirect primary is adopted, and I don't think it affects my political fortune. In any event, if I don't win the election, I can always go back either to my law firm or to the classroom.
If you can hear me, Senator Bashiru?
Yes, okay, I can hear you.
You can hear me, okay, because we need to round this up very quickly.
So I want to say that the last option will be for us to look at possibility of overriding the presidential veto, which has to be done by 2/3 majority of the chamber of the National Assembly.
Okay,
but I will say that all options are on the drawing board, but more importantly,
Senator Bashiru, I hear you very clearly, but I wanted to ask you, the feeling of many Nigerians is that this night assembly, this National Assembly of Nigeria as composed, as constituted at this time, lacks the capacity to resist the President of Nigeria. True or false? Briefly, because we need to move on.
I don't know what we mean by resistance. We are not elected to resist the President. We are elected to make law for the good governance of the country, and we will not allow ourselves to be constituted as an opposition assembly. We have to look at the arguments for and against the direct primary and take a rational decision that further electoral integrity in Nigeria.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Ajibola Bashiru, spokesperson of the Senate of the Ninth National Assembly of Nigeria, for joining us. We'll take it.